Hello everyone and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. I'm Mandy Lockley. I'm recording this the day before the sun goes into Sagittarius. So we're in Sagittarius season very, very shortly, and Mars also moves into Sagittarius around about the same time. Then we have a full moon in Gemini. I'll be saying a few words about that. And then when Venus in early December goes into Scorpio, a few words about that. It's a very interesting sign for Venus when it goes into Scorpio. First of all, let's think about Sagittarius. The sign of Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter. It's a sign associated with being optimistic, expansive, generous, energetic. Sagittarius is about the big picture, the broader perspective, expanded horizons. So happy birthday to Sagittarians out there. These are some energies that you will be able to relate to if you have the sun in Sagittarius, or even if you have other planets in Sagittarius. The moon, particularly Sagittarius rising even. If you don't have anything in Sagittarius, then you can kind of look to the house that the sign of Sagittarius falls into to look at the area of life that might be coloured by the qualities of Sagittarius, or where you're invited to bring some of the qualities of Sagittarius. I'll put a link to a video below that describes the houses, the areas of life that each of the house corresponds to, if you're not familiar with the houses. So Sagittarius, we'll all be in this energy of Sagittarius while the sun's in Sagittarius. Some of us more than others, as I've said, but we'll all be feeling that Sagittarius energy, or we can choose to. So as I said, it's optimistic and expansive. It's Jupiterian. It's all about growth, actually, Sagittarius. Sagittarius doesn't like to stay still. It's a mutable sign. It likes to chop and change, and it likes to do different things. But broadly speaking, so much optimism with Sagittarius, and promise. Promise is another good word for Sagittarius. There's the promise of good things. There's the promise of growth. There's the promise of good luck. One thing that we do find with Sagittarius, though, is Sagittarius energy can become disillusioned occasionally, because there's so much optimism and so much faith that things are going to turn out all right in the end, when inevitably sometimes life doesn't deliver us everything that we want, or all the abundance that we feel that we want. We can get a bit disillusioned, and this is a thing for Sagittarians. Sometimes they can get a little bit disillusioned with life. They bounce back. Remember, Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, is gas planet. It's kind of bouncing, not literally, of course, the planet itself isn't bouncing around in that respect, but there's a bounce back. There's a kind of resilience there. It's a fire sign after all. This kind of, once the fire goes out, the fire can easily reignite. So it's about travel and internationalism, actually. Internationalism is a theme for Sagittarius. I know many Sagittarians who have travelled a lot, worked abroad. Wisdom, honesty, truth, and ethics are the themes for Sagittarius. Sagittarius can actually have its own truth. It can value honesty, but it can be tactless at times, kind of put its foot in it and offend other people, more sensitive people. As a fire sign, sometimes there's that lack of sensitivity. However, well-meaning, and generally speaking, Sagittarius is a well-meaning sign. It's a sign that needs to have a vision. If you're strong in Sagittarius, it's very helpful to have a vision for where you want to go, what you want to do, a broad vision, an optimistic vision, maybe a big vision. Don't think small with Sagittarius. Sagittarius doesn't think small. It's a future-oriented sign, so look into the future. But remember that a vision needs goals, needs steps in the right direction. It's all very well having this vision and have this faith and this optimism that everything's going to happen, but it needs action. Also remember with Sagittarius, as I say, it's so future-orientated that one day everything's going to be brilliant, even if things aren't now. There's that forgetting really to be grateful and to enjoy what's happening for you in the present, which is where you can bring the adventurous spirit of Sagittarius. I've known again lots of Sagittarians who love an adventure, whether that's an adventure of travel or adventures of the mind and wisdom and higher education and growth and learning is very important for the sign of Sagittarius. I'm reminded of a family friend, no longer with us, sadly, but he was very Sagittarian. He worked all over the world. He always had a very optimistic outlook. He was big. He was slightly pompous as well, in a nice way, but he could be pompous at times. That's something for Sagittarians to think about, sort of knowing that thinking that they're the best or whatever. But this this gentleman was very successful in life, and he had a couple of mottos that he lived by that he would repeat often, which was never lose your nerve. Now that's kind of quite interesting, isn't it, for a fire sign, for a Sagittarius? That courage of just going for what you want, holding on to that optimism and don't letting anything hold you back. And the other thing that he said is don't burn your bridges. What he means is don't sort of walk away, don't burn your bridges, don't fall out with people because you never know when they might be useful, where they might bring opportunity. And Sagittarius is always on the lookout for opportunity. So while the sun is in Sagittarius, think about what opportunities there are. Think about what networks and connections you can make. Think about your vision for the future. And think about what it might be like to be fulfilling your vision now. Think in the present terms, think, well, I would like a promotion, or I would like to go back to university because Sagittarius is also about higher education, or I would like to travel more. Start setting goals around that vision. Clarify the vision, set goals. Now, the other thing we have to think about for Sagittarius, because there's so much opportunity out there and they don't want to miss out. Sagittarian energy doesn't want to miss out on an opportunity. Sagittarian can take on too much, can say yes to everything in that spirit of optimism, but then feel a little bit overwhelmed. Anything that has over in the front of it, any word if you put over in the front of it, not every word, but many words, positive words that you put over in front of it, like to promise, over promise. These are some sort of key sort of dynamics for Sagittarius. So Sagittarius can take on too much and then over promise. And that means they can end up disappointing other people as well as themselves. Now, as I said, the sun goes into Sagittarius on the 23rd of November, where it stays for a month, going into Capricorn on the 23rd of December. The day after, sun goes into Sagittarius, Mars also goes into Sagittarius. So they're kind of traveling together, the sun and Mars. Now, Mars, as we know, is about how you assert yourself. So think of all those Sagittarian energies and Sagittarian qualities that I've just talked about. And when Mars is in Sagittarius, that's how you assert them, how you express them, how you act on them. We talked about having a vision and setting goals and acting on that vision. So there's enthusiasm. Mars in Sagittarius, just like Sun in Sagittarius, perhaps even a little bit more so, can be slightly tactless. It can be, well, I'm going to tell you this because that's honest. Just being honest. But there's lack of sensitivity there sometimes. That can sometimes come across as aggressive because Mars in any sign, if it goes over the top or lacks sensitivity, can come across as aggressive in different ways. But with Mars in Sagittarius, there is always a strong belief, or there should be. Then there should be a strong belief or a strong value behind the actions, that you're actually acting in a way that is true to your core values. So while Mars is in Sagittarius, think about what your values are and how you express those. Take action, as I said, based on the vision that you might have for your future, without forgetting that today is the present day and to enjoy the journey. Sagittarius is all about the journey. And Sagittarius really has the quality of being able to enjoy the journey so long as they can actually remember to be in the present moment and not just thinking about the future. Adventure, I've already talked about the adventure for Sagittarius Sun. Mars is how you take action to actually go on that adventure. That might be an adventure of travel. You might feel this season that you want to do some traveling or plan for the future traveling, or it might be about growth and self-improvement, thinking about what you might want to do in terms of new learning or wisdom or learning new skills to help you in your career. So it's about the desire to advance yourself in some way. So think about that this season, this Sagittarius season. And as I said, the sun is conjunct Mars. Going to be traveling together for a week or so, a little bit more. So this is a very energizing combination. When Sun gets together with Mars, there's energy, there's vitality, dynamism, particularly in Sagittarius. It's a fire sign, it's dynamic. Maybe it's a chance for you to step into your leadership. Mars can be how you lead as well as how you assert yourself. Do you assert yourself in a leadership type of way, or do you assert yourself kind of meekly? There's nothing meek really about Mars in Sagittarius, but perhaps in your own chart, you could think about where you could be more adventurous, more daring. Sagittarius, with its ruler Jupiter, can be about taking risks. So think about where you might take a calculated risk, not throw everything into, don't risk things. That's where you can kind of trip up with Sagittarius and anything kind of Jupiterian, calculated risks. It's quite important to think through if you are anything, sort of anything to do, whatever area of life it is, depending on where Sagittarius is in your chart, whether it's, moving or starting a new job or financial things. Think about if there's any risk there. And if there is, take a calculated risk. Intuition, because it's a fire sign, Sagittarius. Use your intuition when making decisions. Don't be bombarded by someone else's optimism. Sagittarius can be the natural salesperson, really kind of the gift of the gab, can really talk you going into things. So if you find yourself in that situation, like you're offered something, an offer you can't refuse, just take a little bit of time, bring your inner Saturn a little bit and sort of take a little time, a little bit of caution. Take a couple of weeks if you can to think about whether this is too good to be true or whether there's something in it, as I said, just to be careful in that respect. So let's have a look now at the full moon. I'm going to share the screen so we can have a look at the chart here for the full moon in Gemini. So you can see there in house 11 at the top of the chart, and the houses that the full moon falls in will depend on where the chart is set for and the time of the chart, etc. So don't take too much notice of the house. It's set for London, this chart. I always set them for London because that's where I live. It's my default setting. You can see the Sun and Mars in Sagittarius there. I've just talked about the Sun and Mars in Sagittarius. All of those things. Think about all the things I've just said. That's coming to a head with the full moon in Sagittarius. If you follow the line down to house 5, you'll see the moon in Gemini. So we're looking here at the dynamic between Gemini and Sagittarius. So what does Gemini bring to Sagittarius? Well, just talked about intuition. Sagittarius. Reason and logic at best. Gemini collects and gathers the facts and applies reason and logic, as I've just talked about. So think about that. I've just talked about if something seems too good to be true, maybe it is. Maybe get the facts, the data. Gemini. Wisdom versus knowledge. Wisdom is what Sagittarius brings to the table. Wisdom is not so much about what you know, not the information, the facts. It's how you use those facts. It comes through experience. Wisdom comes through experience. Whereas Gemini is about the information, knowledge. So arm yourself with the knowledge during this full moon and try and be wise, make wise decisions. It's all about communication. It's all about movement. So when we talk about, for example, travel, long haul travel is more Sagittarius, whereas short journeys is Gemini. That can be a metaphor for your journey through life. Your journey into wisdom is a longer journey than your journey into getting information, which is Gemini, short journey. So it's this, if we're talking about the vision that I've just talked about, having a vision for where you want to be going forward, we're coming towards the end of the year. You know, it's going to be, it's towards the end of November, then we've got December, then it's January. And very often we like to make a fresh start, or at least plan for a fresh start in the new year. So maybe it's time to start thinking, what's your vision for the next few months or the next few years going forward? And then break that down into goals, manageable goals. This might be a good use of your time during this full moon. You'll see that there is if you look in house 2, there is a square to Saturn in Pisces in house 2. I haven't circled that one. It's a waning square, it's a separating square, which means that it's, you know, it's had most of its influence. So you might have felt in the few days leading up, you might feel rather in the few days, you know, starting now, actually, if you're watching this on the 22nd, 23rd, you might feel some kind of doubts or fears or anxieties. You might feel there are some things being delayed, some obstacles in your way, bit of anxiety. While Saturn is still making a square to this full moon, it's still making a square during this full moon. After the full moon, you will hopefully start to see some of those obstacles moving out of the way, some of those anxieties and fears moving out of the way. And then you can reflect on the information that you have about what's happened or what's happening, apply the wisdom and the intuition, and then you can move forward and move out of any kind of anxiety that you might be feeling. So get the facts and the details and set goals, as I said. This full moon is a restless energy. It's a very restless energy, really. Anyway, Gemini and Sagittarius together as an axis of opposites. It's a restless energy. It needs to move your body, move your energy, do something, especially with Mars there. Mars really asks you to be physical in some way. Otherwise, that energy can build up into anxiety or into anger. Again, Mars is how you see red, you know, and we don't want to be spilling all our anger and anxiety around when we can actually move it, move our bodies, take some action, set some goals. Interestingly, another interesting sort of dynamic between Gemini and Sagittarius is morality. Morality is part of the wisdom aspect of Sagittarius. Sagittarius has its own morality. It can be quite a moral sign. It likes justice, has its own morality and its own truths, as I've probably already said. You know, this is my truth, this is my wisdom, this is what I know, this is my experience, is what Sagittarius says. Whereas there is an amorality to Gemini. I'm not saying immoral, I'm saying amoral. Information is information. It's not right, it's not wrong. Gemini sifts through the information, and then we can apply that information to the morality and the intuition, as I've said, for Sagittarius. So they work quite well together. You've got the big picture of Sagittarius, you've got the small detail of Gemini. Now, as we know, on any full moon, it's when things come to light. So what might come to light? It's full light of the moon. We can look up at the sky and we can actually see that. We don't have to have a telescope, or we don't have to know astronomy. We can all look up and see the full moon. It's the brightness of the full moon. So what does that mean? Well, things come to light, as I've said. Think about, with these two signs, gossip, rumor, chatter, noise, a lot of noise. What are you hearing? think about that and try not to put your foot in it too much. Try not to believe all the information that you hear under this full moon. Okay, because as I said, rumor and gossip is often gets out of hand, it gets exaggerated. Exaggeration is another key word for Sagittarius. Sagittarius tends to exaggerate, in particularly Mercury in Sagittarius. You see Mercury here in this chart, it falls at the cusp of house 1 on the ascendant. Mercury is in Sagittarius, the planet of communication in the sign of exaggeration. So don't believe everything that you hear. Gemini can get very excited, loving a good gossip, speak before they think. And Sagittarius can also speak before they think. Think about the impact of your words. You know, this can be not just spoken words, but messages, social media. You know, have a little bit of wisdom there. Bring that Sagittarian wisdom before you start sharing any gossip or rumors, particularly because you've got Saturn there. Saturn is making that T square, although it's kind of relaxing a little bit. It is still, you know, going to pull you up if you get things wrong. Okay, Saturn is the taskmaster that will pull you up. So that's the full moon. A little bit of happy time. We're getting into the so-called silly season, you know, where there's lots of festivals and holidays coming up. We have, of course, the Thanksgiving in America. We have Christmas. We have the festivals of other religions as well. Now, before I say goodbye and good luck, I just want to mention that Venus will be changing signs on the 4th of December. It goes into Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio from the 4th of December to the 31st of December when it goes into Sagittarius. So traditionally, Scorpio is the sign of Venus's fall, which means it's the sign where Venus is the most uncomfortable. So what does that mean? Well, it's intensely passionate, Venus in Scorpio, but not always in a healthy way. So have a think about where Scorpio falls in your chart, whether you have planets in Scorpio or not. Have a think about what house Scorpio falls in. Again, as I've already mentioned earlier in the video, I'll put a little link at the bottom of this video that shows us, that can show you what the houses mean. The houses, as I'm sure most of you listening to this probably know, reflect areas of your life. So in what area of your life is there an influence of Scorpio? And Venus will be there. Venus is the planet of relationships. So think about your relationships. How healthy are they? Venus likes things to be nice. Venus likes things to be harmonious and peaceful. But during Venus in Scorpio, perhaps there might be a sense of where you are holding onto deep feelings of resentment without maybe realizing it. Maybe these will come up to show you where you are not feeling particularly happy. There might be resentments there. Relationships will potentially feel heavier during this period. Now, Venus is the planet that likes to compromise. It likes harmony, it likes peace, as I've already said, and that's often through compromise and negotiation. Scorpio can be uncompromising. So you can see where there's not quite the fit between Venus and Scorpio, that uncompromising nature. Venus in Scorpio, if you know people who have Venus in Scorpio in their charts, they're very passionate people. If they like you, if they love you, they like you and love you forever, unless or until you betray them and then they're gone. They take a dislike to you, even early on in a friendship or a relationship. Forget about it. They very rarely change their mind. They won't compromise. Loyalty for Venus in Scorpio, for Scorpio generally, loyalty. It's a very loyal sign, Scorpio, but that loyalty is earned. People pleasing is scrapped. The people pleasing side of Venus is scrapped. And they're not interested in people pleasing just for the sake of it. talking about that loyalty, that can go a step further into possessiveness, not just for people, but for other things in your life, your assets, the things that you own. There's a possessiveness there. So think about where you might be getting over possessive. Because we're talking about relationships, think about where others in relationships might be getting over possessive as well. It's also suggested Venus in Scorpio, the idea of secrets in relationships, secret liaisons, dangerous liaisons, perhaps, forbidden love, that kind of thing, those kind of themes. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you because that's fairly rare, but that's certainly a thing with Venus in Scorpio, particularly if Scorpio is strong in your chart, or you have Venus in Scorpio, or for example, if Scorpio is your seventh house, the house of relationships, or your eighth house as well. So drama in relationships is possible. Think about where you might be creating drama, or others might be creating drama. Bring compassion into that. Try not to create drama. It can be where you are too trusting. So think about where you might be too trusting in relationships. We've already talked about with the full moon and with Sagittarius at the moment that, when things seem too good to be true, they might be too good to be true. So think about where you put your trust during this season of Venus in Scorpio, as I said, between the 4th and the 31st of December. So perhaps you're too trusting, or perhaps you're not trusting enough. Perhaps not being able to trust is getting in the way of having truly intimate relationships, and intimacy is very important to Venus in Scorpio. Also, perhaps think about where your hidden motivations are, or the hidden motivations of others. Power in relationships. Often with Venus in Scorpio, money is power. Secrets are kept and secrets are revealed eventually. So think about all those things for Venus in Scorpio. As I said, Venus in Scorpio is passionate, it's intense, it's magnetic in some ways. Many of us think that we want this deep, intense passion in our relationships, excitement and drama. When that actually happens, it's often not as exciting and as nice as you think it's going to be, because Venus, at the end of the day, whatever sign it is in, he wants things to be nice. But with Venus in Scorpio, as I said, it's the sign of its fall traditionally, where it's least comfortable. That niceness might be harder to find. Not saying there isn't magnetism and charm, but just a few things to think about when Venus is in Scorpio. So I hope that's interesting. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I wish you all the best and the love and the expansion and the growth and the passion of these astrological times. We're in for a ride next year when Pluto goes into Aquarius again. So let's enjoy the journey. Let's enjoy the present moment. Let's hold a vision in our mind, and let's make some action and some goals towards our vision so we can make the coming months beautiful. Thank you so much. Goodbye.